Well, hello everyone. You have right here. I'm talking about with the brain right here, and we all probably thinking too that when we do think about the brain right here, what exactly is it that we're thinking about necessarily? And most of the time, it's like okay about the thinking and all that, or maybe about you just about how well that you compare your knowledge, compared to a few other people, and you want to know too that yeah each time you think about the brain, by the way, it sure seems that way. That almost all the time it's going to remind you of those moments as to where that yeah these should be memorized and all that. But it sure seems that way that every time you do have a job interview or any source of meeting, and let's just say if you're going to be going to a meeting or something like that, a lot of times it seems like it's all about testing your knowledge, right, to where what you can remember right here. And so that's why it seems like that when we think about the things from what we can remember for sure, and you're always want to know too that yeah, if that's really the point of the matter, or does that pretty much mean as to where that somebody is telling you something? Does that pretty much mean is to where that something that happened maybe a week ago or something like that? So a lot of times it seems like that each time you think about that, then you're always want to know too that yeah, that the things from what you can remember. And so, really, if that's really about how the brain works, or like everybody would say that, if you were to be looking at a picture like this, and you might even think too that, what exactly is it that that's going to remind you of necessarily? And I have right here, I've talked about the typical psychology, right? And so it sure seems that way that when we do speak about psychology, that do we necessarily think about is that yeah the feeling of how people feel, how they feel, and also another way of how you want to look at it is toward the study about people's minds. What exactly is it? You are not them, so what exactly is it that somebody what are they thinking about right here? So each time you think about the brain right here, are you thinking about your own brain, or you maybe if you're thinking about what everybody else is thinking about, is toward okay, yeah, especially whenever you close your eyes and whenever you are thinking out loud or maybe thinking to yourself and all that. But still, whenever you do the studies about the typical mind thinking right here, and you're thinking is toward yeah that the way that you read and understand everybody else is going to be a lot different. It's going to be so different than compared to everybody else, and that is why it seems like that people might say that it's also known as like a disability, a disability diagnosis, disorder and all that. So it's like so every time you think about that, and you want to know too that hey, that when we do speak about disability and all that, or maybe if we do speak about studying about the brain and your ability for what you can do, right? And you're thinking is toward it, yeah, that every time you do think about the brain, and then maybe the typical study in psychology, that you always want to know too that how come not everybody really wants to think about is this toward anything real interesting, and so far as yeah is understand right here, and so it sure seems that way that every time you think about that and you're warned to where that a lot of teachers, by the way, might even say that you know uh, it's considered to be a problem to them just because of the fact that they don't understand what is it that you're doing, and it sure seems that way that everybody might even say that that's not really supposed to be your fault just because somebody else doesn't understand what is it that you're talking about, and what is it that you're referring to, and what is it that you're working with. And my understanding is that I would like to know too, is to where that you if you are not them, you are not this somebody else who wrote the paper. You are not the somebody else who did do the study and the research to put the work together. And so if it's not going to be something that you really understand, it's going to be a problem, right? So if it's going to be any source of problem solving, right? So So every time you think about the brain right here, you might be thinking as to where that, yeah, not everybody really wants to deal with those problems or so, or if you're good at solving problems. But still, that, people might say is to where that, yeah, well, maybe just to get a better understanding about the problem is to remember the facts, right? So it's like, so every time you do think about the brain right here, you want to test, like everybody might say that, you really want to test the brain for sure. You want to test the memory by saying is to where you look at a few photographs and what is it that you remember about that? And everybody might say, yeah, even if you do right remember on here sideways, right here, if you put that right there sideways in 102, that, anything that you remember from looking at those photographs right there. So, like, yeah, the memory right there. And so every time you think about that, then you're 102 that, really, that what sorts of functionality do you think that you'll be able to get whenever it comes to study about the brain right here? Like the brain right here, that your brain is going to work different than compared to everybody else from what you're trying to understand, right? And that is why it seems like that almost all the time that you're thinking is toward that those requirements are there for a reason, but on the other hand, that reasons and but still, you're understanding about the brain right here, but then also remembering. And maybe that's why it seems like that the first thing that I thought about back whenever I was young is the things that you can remember that maybe that made you smarter. And do you think that that's really true? To where the fact of the matter is that that the more that you can remember, and the more that you can figure out something that made you smarter than compared to everybody else in the classroom, in the meeting room, and so, do we necessarily think about that to where that if you could remember this, or maybe if you can figure that out, that makes you the smartest person in the room? And so, every time I think about that, then you're warned to where that you look at the study right here, the brain right here, and you're always warned, too, this to where that your brain is not the same as compared to everybody else, and that is why that the work that you do is going to be quite different than compared to everybody else. So really that so every time I think about that, then you're always want to know too that what's one thing that's maybe going to make you feel more proud, for that be impressive, to show everybody else. And the first thing that I would usually say is that what can you remember about stuff? And so it's like, yeah, so every time I think about that, I'm always thinking as to where that the more that you can remember, then maybe the more that somebody's going to want to talk to you about something, or maybe the more that there are chances that you can solve a mystery story or something like that. You can solve a problem. The more that you can remember, the more that you can actually put the pieces together of the puzzle. And so that's why, like everybody might say, that you spend so much time, studying the brain, about how the brain works, and maybe about how people's minds are working, necessarily just because of the fact that what for what you can remember. And we all know that testing your memory, by the way, that there are some good memory and some bad memory and all that, but still that but it's like, yeah, so every time you go to these interviews, by the way, that they're always going to tell you that, remember, it's, and I'm like, yeah, so don't make it harder than what it really is, for sure. But it's like, yeah, between easy and hard. But it's like, but whenever you do think about that, then you're one or two that, what exactly does remember pretty much mean? Is to where it's all about a recap of your memory, or like everybody else would say, is to where that don't make it, try to make the sentences shorter. You just put one word in there to remember, remember the important facts about something. And so that's why it seems like, if you're trying to get the job done for sure, that, this job is going to maybe require you to write a full paper or two, or maybe 3 pages, maybe 5 pages or 10 pages of explaining about what you were working with. But still, that, if it's facts matter or something like that, anything that you were trying to understand during the time, But I would like to know too that whenever it talks about the studying about the brain right here, that if anybody who's going to be grading any sorts of work might even say is to where that yeah, if you can remember a lot of things that you talked about during that meeting for sure, that don't you think that maybe that you would deserve a real good grade report rather than if you got a C or something like that for that, but still, or a B minus or something, but each time you think about that, then you're warned to where that thinking about the brain right here, and you're warned to where that yeah that doing the studies about the typical brain science right here, and you're warned to where that really, why is it that everybody's giving you such a hard time a lot of times whenever it comes to trying to work on something and trying to solve a problem and maybe trying to write a paper or anything that you're trying to do, and everybody else is having a hard time understanding that, and that's not necessarily your fault either, but just knowing that everybody might say that the first thing that you're going to say is that to remember, remember what we talked about. You'll remember what I told you. You'll remember, about what we practiced with, and so that's why it seems like that the first thing that comes to your mind when we do speak about writing down notes and maybe doing a lot of studying is from what we can remember, right? And it seems like that, every time you do think about that, and you're always want to know too that can you really get the job done just by from what you can remember, or like everybody would say is that whenever you do the studies about the brain, the typical mind thinking, though, and you're warned to where that yeah, that what exactly is it that other people are thinking about? Are they thinking what you're thinking? And talking about reading people's minds, what exactly is their mind? What exactly are you thinking about necessarily? So when we talk about reading somebody's mind, what exactly does that mean? And everybody might say that I know exactly what it means. Is that you just that you assume what they're saying or something like that whenever you read somebody's mind. So what exactly is it that you're thinking about? I'm like, yeah, it pretty much means whenever you read somebody's mind, it means is to where that you understand before they speak. So before the directions are provided, and maybe before that information is provided to you during a time, and like everybody might say that yeah, a lot of the teachers, by the way, they use that example and phrase right here of knowing about the fact about whenever it comes to understanding about the teachers, right? And people may want to know too that yeah, that just because the directions were not provided right away during the time, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do the work and all that. But still, that but each time we do think about that, and you're one or two that hey, that how come that yeah, that whenever you are giving work though, that what does it usually mean whenever you read somebody's mind? That pretty much means is to where that the directions were provided just by what she talked about, based on the notes, from what was discussed in the classroom. And like everybody might say, that maybe not all the directions are going to be written down, and that is why it seems like that. Whenever somebody, I'm like, yeah, whenever somebody was talking about a few things from earlier, that pretty much means is toward it. Yeah, well, if you read the directions very clearly, that there will be another paragraph of what the teacher wanted you to do or something like that, or yeah, there was something else in the directions that she asked you to do. And, so you need to understand before they speak or before they give you further instructions or something like that. And, for what's highly suggested or maybe anything about what they want to comment about and all that. So each time you think about that, then you want to know too that, yeah, that the first thing that you think about even if it's been maybe a week later or something like that, and like everybody might say that I speak, and let's just say that yeah, it's it was it was 3 weeks later. Yeah, 3 weeks later. 3 weeks later, I expect this paper to be completed, or I expect you to go ahead and read the first page one, chapter 1 and 2, or something like that. So, whenever you do think about that, then you're warned to where that yeah, 3 weeks later or something like that. What do you remember from those first two chapters or something like that? And so it's like, yeah, so talk about for remember right here. And so that, something to remember somebody by or something like that, or something to remember. And so each time you think about that, then you're always want to know too that are those supposed to be facts? And everybody might say that, I think, yeah, they're facts. And they're facts. What are facts? And everybody say, yeah, what exactly, what are facts? And facts are pretty much are as to where yeah, those are the main objectives. Those are the points. The point is, the main point. The point is that these are the things to focus on mainly. And so every time you do think about that, and you're always want to know too that instead going on instead going on the details about this and that that they're saying is toward it that don't forget this, and don't forget what we talked about. And so yeah, so every time you think about the brain right here, and you're always thinking is to where that yeah, this should be memorized. Yeah, that all that should be memorized right there. And if it's not, then but still, it's like but everybody would say that the number of times that you done the study about the typical brain of the mind thinking right here, and you're thinking is toward it, yeah. Anything creative, or maybe anything that you suggested to show to the teacher during the time, or show to the manager or somebody like that, and you're thinking that why don't they listen to you instead of thinking about the rules and the requirements all the time? But I guess that's just way how they teach and all that. Like a lot of schools and a lot of companies, I say to you, that's just how they train their employees on a lot of stuff. But on the other hand, that when we do speak about the things from what you can remember, right? And you're thinking as to, okay, yeah, that this is from what you can remember right here. Is that when we do speak about what you can remember right here, yeah, I remember that. And so every time, yeah, you do the typical mind study right here, and you're thinking is that, yeah, looking at the photographs especially, but still, that when we do talk about the brain right here, and everybody might say that, there are some things that you can remember and some things that you cannot remember, and that is why it seems like that, each time you do think about that, and you're 102 that whenever you're working on something and trying to you're trying to recall going at yeah rewinding a few chapters and all that, and you're always thinking that how often are we really going to hear the word remember, and what exactly is it that they're trying to tell you when we talk about remember right here. Remember that this is it don't have to be so hard. It don't have to be so complicated. Just remember these facts right here is to better understand that. And yeah, it's not so hard. And I guess that's the point of the matter. It it is not that hard. Yeah. So any teachers might even say too that it's not that hard. It's not that hard. You can do this. It's not that hard to be able to figure that out and all that. And so at the time you want to know too that every time you do think about that, then you want to know too that whenever you're going to be working on something, and somebody is going to say that I didn't do that right away because it's too hard. It's hard for me to understand all that. And And so that's why it seems like that, if you're given the directions, or maybe if you're given a book to read or something like that, but, every time you do think about the typical mind thinking, that you're always want to know too that, maybe everybody's brain, everybody's brain is going to be, everybody's brain's similar and different and all that, but still, it's like each time you think about that, and you're always want to know too that, really what part of the brain that produces creativity, like everybody would say, is that is the front part of your brain mainly the the front part of the brain is the main part that shows the creativity, in this part right here, the brain cell that just has that part memorized or something like that. So every time you do think about the brain right here, and you're thinking that, really, what part of the brain, like if you were to wake up, like, yeah, like everybody say, if you got a lot going on for sure, what part of the brain that works better, whenever you're taking a test or something like that. But each time you think about that, then you're always want to know too that, yeah, you find something. Yeah, find something to remember me by, and so it sure seems that way. Yeah, I got that in big print, by the way. But okay, is it gonna work? All right, all right. Anyway, but yeah, you talk about for remembering, right? But anyway, yeah, I was trying to type that in there, but see here if it'll work if I just do a few adjustments right here. But anyway, but yeah, the things from what you can remember, right? And you want to know too that hey, that how come that yeah, you didn't do that work right away? What happened? I go, well, but anyway, but it sure seems that way that when we do talk about remembering things, and a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever you do remember, and every time you think about that, and people are always thinking too that yeah, remember, yeah, remember this, remember the facts, and you remember, and so it's like, yeah, it don't have to be so hard, and a lot of times people say that that's usually what it means. It don't make it any harder than what it really is. Just remember, you remember what we talked about. And but anyway, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.